Perfect. Hello, everyone. Let's try to get started more or less on time because I think we have quite a bit of agenda to go through today. I am filling in for Tim today, who is out of office. Yeah, then let's just jump right into it. First off on the agenda, we wanted to briefly recap a few items from Interop, in particular the 45 million gas limit increase that is planned and the DevNet that was run at Interop. So first for the gas limit increase, Pari, are you on? Could you give a quick update on client readiness and the timeline here?
Yeah, hey, hope you guys can hear me. So over the course of the week, we had a bunch of opcode tests and benchmarks that we ran against all the clients. We were able to get all the clients above the 20 million mark without mod XP and around the 13-ish million mark with mod XP. Most clients do have some performance fixes or releases pending, which should happen over the course of the next week. And also was discussed on ACDE, and all the clients seem to be okay with moving ahead with 45 million once the releases are done. We should have some blog posts analyzing how stuff looks and what approaches we use to get to the number. But yeah, more would be coming over the next week.
Okay, sounds good. Any client comments on this? Anything we need to talk about here on this point? Okay, then we can briefly go to the other Interop point, which was the Berlin-Top DevNet 2 that we ran at Interop. Barnabas, do you want to very briefly give an update of where that is at?
Sure. So we launched Berlin Interop approximately almost a week ago now, 5 days ago, and we have 83% participation on the network right now. There's a quick link. We have a few clients that are looking into some missed slots. I have pinged everyone already yesterday, and they're taking a look. And we plan to shut down this network on next week, Tuesday, just the day after we have launched DevNet 2.
Sounds good. And I assume that also depends obviously on finalizing the timing for DevNet 2, which will be the next agenda point. Ben, you had a remark?
Yeah, do we need to discuss what was in the Berlin Interop DevNet 2? Oh, I suppose yeah, never mind. That's the next point.
So the next point will be on the full DevNet 2. So the naming here is a bit confusing, right? So basically, Berlin Top DevNet 2, the one that we had at Interop, and then we will have full DevNet 2. I guess we could have called it DevNet 3, but whatever. That we will launch hopefully next week. Ben, do you think it would be important to also briefly recap the scope of Berlin Top DevNet 2?
Well, it comes up in the next point, so we can discuss it there. It was just the scope of it. That was all.
Okay.
Don't
Yeah,
we
my
need-
understanding was that I mean, yeah, it basically included the CFI'd EIPs except for 7907, and it included one not CFI'd EIP, which was 7939. But yeah, let's talk about the implications of that in the next section. Then yeah, we can move on to thank you, Barnabas, to talking about the next DevNet, which will be DevNet 2, and the hope would be to launch that next week. In general, just to briefly basically recap where we're at in terms of Fusaka progress, we are really getting to the point where we want to have the fork frozen. Frozen means 2 points. One, ideally we can today make final decisions about inclusion. So we have CFI DIPs, where we today should make the final go no-go decision whether to move them to SFI and schedule them for the upcoming DevNet. And with the understanding that whatever is not selected for DevNet 2, at least as of today, would then be intended to also just not go into the hard fork. And then within the already SFI'd EIPs, there are some small last parameters that also need to be decided. And again, ideally, we would make that decision today as well. Barnabas, I think you also wanted to briefly talk about basically the ideal timeline for DevNet 2 and what basically the plan would be, assuming we can get all of these finalized today.
Yeah, so the timeline would be that we can start testing basic interrupt functionality tomorrow, and we should be able to launch DevNet, Fusaka DevNet 2 on Monday around noon, Central European time. This is assuming that we will have at least 3 EAs and 3 CLs ready by then. If we can get it by then we're going to push the launch by a day and see if we can get ready by then.
Sounds good. So the plan would be now for us to just go through the list of all the EIPs where there's still a question about inclusion decision. So those are 4 EIPs here in particular, and then we have 3 more EIPs that are already included, where or 2 EIPs that are already included. One special case that's a non protocol changing EIP that we then also have to talk about. So first off, the first section here will be final inclusion decisions, basically. So let's get going with that. The first item here, the first one to talk about is EIP 7951. That is the R1 precompile. The number might be confusing to people because there used to be an IIP 7.2.12, but because there were some small spec incompatibilities with the version that we want to have on mainnet, the decision was made I think on a previous call already, to have that be superseded by a proper EIP. So now that is EIP 7951. That EIP is currently still on CFI, and so the proposal would be today to move it to SFI and include it. I have 2 items on my list here to discuss about this. The first one would be the final cost of the precompile. Marius had looked into this and had found that the precompile is underpriced at roughly basically half the cost per millisecond compute as EC Recover, and so was recommending a doubling of the cost. Have other clients had time to look into the performance of the R1 precompile, and do they generally agree with this recommendation, or would they prefer to keep the current pricing in place?
So if wait, is there an echo?
Yeah. Okay. Hello. Yeah, I think if Marius found this, it'd be nice if other clients could confirm, and then yeah, assuming we find this differential, we should just raise the cost of the R1 precompile. That being said, I think that can be done in parallel to having it on DevNets. This is something we can keep iterating on at the same time. So I think we should go ahead and move forward with inclusion.
Well, then, to just immediately revisit, the goal would be to today get to a version where, at least from the EL side, basically everything is frozen, including parameters. We could, of course, that could mean we make the decision and that EIP then still has to be updated. If then in testing and everything, of course, we find reasons to still need changes, that is still possible, but I would still rather include the EIP today in a form that at least hopefully does not require further changes. Do we like my proposal would basically be to just move the EIP to SFI with the understanding of that the price is doubled, and then we will just update that the EIP to reflect that today. But we can also, of course, keep the current price in place if that people prefer that.
I would say that the decision should be made without a specific price, so we can still figure. I think changing the price is kind of easy to do even later, and we may have to change it a bunch more times if we discover more edge cases and so on. So I feel like we should just make a fundamental decision that yeah, this precompile will be included, but not about which specific gas price, because that is just still like subject to testing.
Okay, that's fine with me. And then just to confirm, that would mean we would leave the price as it currently is in the EIP for DevNet 2 launch, or would we try to by Monday basically get to a updated view on this?
I think it makes no sense to change the price right now. in a rush. We should actually evaluate what the same pricing will be, and then we can do all the repricing EIPs in DevNet 3.
Okay, sounds good. When you say repricing EIPs, you mean just repricing the existing EIPs. There won't be any extra
Yes,
repricing
exactly.
EIPs. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Well, I don't know whether Pari would have any other EIPs that they would need to get into Fusaka.
Well,
or possibly
so
increasing the gas limit.
right. I mean, again, I think we would be good if we made a decision today whether we will be still open to including other EIPs, even just repricing EIPs. But let's talk about this at the end of the section. Okay, so we include anyone against including. Oh wait, sorry. There was one other point on R1, and there was still some question around the return format. Do we have? I'm not sure if we have Carl on the call. Carl,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can speak to this briefly. It's that people don't like the fact that the precompile returns either 1 on success or nothing if the verification fails. The reason we have this is what's deployed as the RIP on all of the L2s. And in terms of like the amount of gas you need to spend to like verify what its return was, that doesn't change. So functionally, it's just that it looks a bit ugly. And you need to look at what the return type is. But I think having like backwards compatibility with all of the L2s that have deployed the RIP is more important than having what I think is mostly an aesthetic improvement on the return type. There hasn't been any like changes like this. This is what I presented on the last ACDE. There haven't been any major changes in terms of my overall thoughts on this, and I think, yeah, it's mostly just an opinion thing on this.
Yeah, wait, can you clarify how it looks like now? So if it succeeds, you get back a 1 value, and if it doesn't succeed, there's
It returns 0 bytes, as in not like bytes that are 0, as a 0 number of bytes.
But what's the alternative?
returning
It
more than
returns all 32 zeros.
yeah.
Okay, and then
Again, it's an aesthetic thing, or like you need to look what the opcode does, so the precompile does kind of thing in the specs. It's maybe not as intuitive as one might expect.
How do the other precompiles work here? I assume they return a word back in either case.
no.
No?
Same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then let's leave this then.
Yeah, we're not changing this. I think. Sorry for the authoritative statement, but I feel like this is like, I don't know. I mean, it's just how it is with the other ones as well.
Yeah. That's why it was chosen to be this way in the beginning. But there has been some pushback from a number of people that they just said they don't like the aesthetics of this, which I think is fair. But as you say, it is what is elsewhere.
Right. So then basically I think the decision we need to make now is just, do we lock this behavior in? Or do we say like the pricing, it is still up for discussion? Again, the more we can lock in today, the better. So it sounds maybe like we are ready to lock this behavior in. Any objections? Okay, then as long as no one is opposed to adding this EIP, then I will move this EIP to SFI, and the understanding is that just the specific pricing is still up for potential change. Okay, perfect. Then one down. Next one up. Next one up is a bit of a contentious one. That is EIP 7907, which is the maximum contract code size increase that is currently on CFI as well. And the question is also whether to move that to SFI or not. This one was the one CFI EIP that was not on the Berlin top DevNet 2. And we now have an alternative simplified proposal, which is EIP 7954. basically because there are some concerns around the original EIP being too complex and not being well enough tested. In general, this is a bit of a tricky situation. I'm not sure if maybe anyone could here has any prepared remarks either for or against any of the two alternative EIPs. Otherwise, I can try to summarize the situation. So basically, the situation is as follows. We have the original proposed EIP that was marked CFI 7907. 7907, what it does is it makes the cost for a loading contract code from disk no longer constant, but above 24K. So basically, the point is that it raises the limit to above 24K. And if a contract is indeed above 24K, then the cost for loading it for any purpose, whether for Xcode hash or Xcode size, or for directly calling the contract, in all of these cases, basically now the cost is proportional to the size of the code, at least above that initial 24K. The concerns that were raised at the beginning of interop were that basically so far this has not been tested. We also don't have good performance benchmarks yet, and this EIP has the somewhat nuanced implication that because you need to know the size of the contract to charge the right amount of gas. Basically, every client needs a new data structure where you basically have a table of contracts to size so that you can look up the size as a first step so you can charge the appropriate amount of gas. In light of us being relatively late into the fork, there was the question of, is this maybe too big of a change to be added at this moment in time? And so that's why we had the alternative proposal. Maybe let's first talk about 7907 and then we can talk about the alternative. Andrew?
So I heard, if I'm not mistaken, I heard at the interop that bigger code sizes make it more difficult to produce ZK proofs. So if our strategic direction is ZK EVM, then maybe we should think twice about increasing the code size limit. But maybe I misunderstand. Perhaps if someone could clarify how the interplay between the code size limit and the ZK EVM, that would be great. But say if it is the case that it makes it harder, but maybe perhaps the extra pricing in 7907 compensates for that, and maybe 7907 is a better version because it's just. But the pricing is better aligned to ZK proofs.
Hey everyone, my name is Dirk. I couldn't find the hands up button, but I'd like to advocate for including 7907 or any sort of smart contract size increase on behalf of Arbitrum. We have a lot of devs that have hit this hurdle of delayed mainnet. So any kind of increase, preferably the one specified in 797, would be greatly appreciated. So yeah, I would definitely love to hear some of the feedback or criticisms for the testing or lack thereof from folks here.
I mean, maybe one thing to respond to Andrew's point. I think it's not just the size of the contract increasing that's complicated for ZKVM. It's more that the cost is constant right now, and it happens that 24 kilobytes is kind of a lot to compute the hash of in the ZKVM, and there's no dynamic pricing. So it's actually better if the pricing becomes dynamic so that you can charge for the work that's being done in that. And maybe, the price right now is not exactly what, it's exactly perfect to support ZKVM, but at least it puts us on the path to having better support for it. Whereas this, just increase the code size to 32 kilobytes or 30 or 48 kilobytes, these don't really address the fact that the computation requirements are different at different code sizes. So that's kind of one thing. And then farther term, we probably need something even better than 7907 for many reasons. Stateless execution is probably going to need code chunking, and that's kind of the thought with 7907 is that eventually we will rethink how code is stored in the state. And at that point, like we have the ability to like really change the costs, but that's likely not going to happen for a few years. And this is like a, not too difficult, pragmatic change to improve the developer experience right now.
So it sounds like 7907 is better aligned with the ZKVM strategy than the other one, than 7954.
I don't know if anyone from the ZKVM team is here. I talked to some messages from Kev that he seemed like this was how he felt, but yeah, I'm not a ZK EVM person, so I can't speak on their behalf.
Ben?
7907 is in principle the better EIP. However, the issue, if we're spec freezing and going live on Monday, is we don't know if any of the pricing's correct, anything like that, because it's from, where is it, the Paris fork pricing, and we're doing much more empirical testing now. So if we want 100 million, 300 million, we don't know if this is very good pricing.
Yeah, I mean, we just kind of said with the R1 precompile, we don't know what the pricing is, and we need to commit to figuring out the pricing, but like we need to commit to the feature. And I kind of feel it's the same here. Like people really need to have larger contracts, and this is like the right shape of the solution, and we need to figure out, what the exact numbers are going to be. I see some comments also, like I made a PR to 7907 earlier today to reduce the max size to 48 kilobytes. So the 256 kilobyte number, I think, is kind of off the table right now. That was my feeling from the Berlin interop.
Right. So obviously the big difference between R1 and this is that R1 is fully implemented and benchmarked, or basically the benchmarking is just needs to be done a bit more thoroughly. So it's just like a one constant change. I think here there's still more open questions, but in principle, yeah, of course this would be a possible course of action. Julio, maybe wait.
Like we don't.
Can we try to keep the order of speakers, Julio?
Yeah, so I actually also agree 707 is in theory a better solution. However, it really depends if we want to freeze the spec today, because if we freeze the spec today, it just seems like nobody kind of agree on the specific of the EIP itself yet. So I think, first of all, if we want 707, it has to happen maybe with only 48 kilobyte, because at 48 kilobyte, you can, to some extent, you may even not need the extra data structure, and that's easier to implement and to test. So that's one thing. And so you cannot go straight to 128 kilobyte after Fusaka anyway, in my opinion. And secondly, it's just kind of like, do we want to freeze the specs today? Because it seems to me like we're basically now just discussing whether we include it now and then we remove it in 2 weeks, right? So like, depends, in my opinion, what the objective here is. Like, if you want to freeze specs today, I mean, we're not sure with 7907. That's my only concern.
I mean, we technically froze the specs last all-core execution dev call. So
yeah, so I'm just saying, like, do we want to make the conscious decision not to freeze the specs today? That's just my question. It's not really anything else.
I think we need to treat it the same way we did the R1. Like, it's an important thing we want to do, and
right.
Commit
I understand. I'm just putting out the question, right? So if the answer is yes, it's fine. I think no is fine also. Like, it's just a yes or no question.
Sure. I think it's
so the main goal that I would at least be somewhat adamant on, and of course I'm happy to be overruled if there is agreement on this. I personally would really want to make decisions today that minimize the risk of us needing a DevNet 3, at least in terms of EL-sized features. PIRDAS is obviously the one CL-side topic that might require further changes. The question is, if we say for R1 anyway, we would want to make a final call on the specific price on Monday, can we get to a version of 7907 that we can include today? That would only require until Monday for us to have high confidence that we can make final decisions for all the parameters on Monday for 7907. If so, then I personally would be fine basically saying we basically delay DevNet 2 launch until Tuesday, for example, and on Monday we make final decisions. But if we think that by Monday we will likely not be in a place yet for the absolute final scope of 7907, then I would personally prefer we would not move it to SFI. I don't know if clients have a feeling for how confident they are on that timeline.
I just want to mention that if there's any benchmark or any test what we need, just let me know. Yeah, I can bench everything, but I just need to know what we want. And I also like clients PR to just limit this max quota size limit. I think we should do that. And I think we should decide this on Monday, but I can make this benchmarks or any tests before Monday. So yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you. Lucas?
Yeah, I think we can also stand behind more or less the newer version with the recent PR. We won't have the implementation for next week though, probably because we don't have it yet. So not sure what that was about the DevNet.
So that would be specifically my concern. Like we want to launch DevNet 2 and DevNet 2 on Tuesday next week at the latest, and so that would have to include all the EIP, all the EL side.
No,
features.
Then that needs probably DevNet. We need DevNet 3 for this then, probably at some point.
Okay, so then maybe we go back. Then the decision first should be: do we want DevNet 2 to be the final scope of Fusaka? Yes or not? No, because then I think that would, to me, imply that if we say yes to that question, then this EIP would be out of consideration, and we could talk about Julio's fallback EIP. If we are instead saying this is an important enough feature to delay freezing Fusaka, and we will have a DevNet 3, and we are fine with the fork launching 2 weeks later, that is a reasonable price to pay. If clients think they can have the EIP ready for 2 weeks from now, I personally, as I said before, I personally would very much prefer to freeze Fusaka scope today and not have a DevNet 3, but it sounds like maybe people disagree. Do we have opinion on whether or not to wait for DevNet 3?
Do we think that 7907 implementation and clients who do not have it right now will take like weeks, or is it more like days? I mean, one thing we could do is just include it today. If there's fine tuning we need to do by Monday, we can try to figure that out. Then, yeah, we could start the DevNet on Tuesday, let's say, then with who's ready. And if it's only a few more days, I think that's fine. If other clients need a few more days to get there, if it's going to be like weeks, that's, I think, a different conversation.
Right. Could we go through the clients briefly and get an update on maybe, I think at least Geth has already implemented this. So Geth would probably, my assumption would be, I'm not sure, obviously they're the modifications made. They might not be reflected in the code yet, but I assume Geth would be ready very soon. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
How about the other clients? Any other clients? I mean, I can go through call on you. I mean, yeah.
Bezo has an implementation as well for 7907 without the code index code size and code hash code size. So yeah, we can get a that would be nice to have like the 48 kilobytes decided, and that would be nice.
So what would be the timeline from the Bezo side on, like, by when could you guarantee?
We can get the branch ready tomorrow with 7907 as the current spec is. If we can change as well depending on like how the PR.
Right, and just to clarify, right, as the spec is today, it does require you to know the contract size before you load it from disk. So that does require the extra data structure. Of course, you can always optimistically load from disk if you are comfortable that that's not a performance hit for you.
Yeah, well, we will implement the code, the index, but not for DevNet 2.
Sounds good. Julio, do you know from the Aragon side?
Yeah, so we kind of started looking into it today. I don't think it's gonna be ready by Monday is my impression. I think we might have it ready without the index though.
I think, well, Milan, maybe you have a more accurate update.
Yeah, hi. So I think we can have it ready for Monday, but that will be without the code size index. And this is something that I think we need to measure properly in Aragon, and that will take more time. So we can have it working, but with this security consideration in mind, I think that requires more time to investigate. We don't have any numbers right now. But probably it'll be fine even without it.
Sounds good. Nethermind, did I already ask about the timeline that would take you for implementation?
No, I'm not sure who would be implementing that. I think Ben, so maybe he want to weigh in. My guesstimate, we can have it for next week, but I won't specify the exact day. And again, it might be not the full with all the database indexes we want to add, but something workable for the DevNet. Ben, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, probably latter half of the next week.
Sounds good. Reth, any from your side? Do these general timelines make sense? Middle, end of next week?
Yeah. So as I've said in the chat, we'll have the implementation ready. We can include it in DevNet 2. We're gonna include it later. Whatever is more comfortable to people.
Sounds good. Then one last check. Matt, maybe you're the best to ask. My understanding would be that even without the index is more like an implementation detail, quote unquote. So basically you could launch DevNet and then even on the same DevNet, clients could switch out the implementation, move to that index structure, and that would not require DevNet 3 launch. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's simply an optimization.
Okay, and follow-up question there, given that we did now reduce the size from the maximum size down to 48 kilobytes. Basically, if it turns out that we just don't have time until the fork to actually move all the clients over to that index, we are just basically, at least the worst case here would be bounded, because even without the optimization, you only have to load at most twice as much from disk, and so there's a limit to how much users could grieve the client there. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, then well, Ben, you have your hand raised. One more comment there.
Do we have any tests for it? Like
No, we don't. That's the problem. And my concern is the OpenPR also. Is that going in? Am I understanding that correctly?
I mean, I would say we should do DevNet 2 as it's specified, and then have this for DevNet 3.
So then I was trying to get this to a shape where we can just wait with DevNet 2 for a few more days and launch it towards the end of next week. Can you then summarize? Okay, so what is the PR and why yeah.
I mean, I can make the changes to our implementation and we can be ready, but we agreed on what DevNet 2 was supposed to be 2 weeks ago. So it feels a little weird to constantly change the thing. But if clients want to do it, it's not that big of a change. It's just at some point we have to do the DevNet 2.
Right. So then, okay, then my general question. So we still don't have tests for this yet. So there's some extra concern. It sounds like basically in this latest version with the 48 kilobyte maximum, at least the uncertainties are limited. So we have three choices now. We can either go ahead without it for DevNet 2, and then decide that we definitely will have a DevNet 3, that we will add this EIP in at a later point. We can launch just DevNet 2 without it and remove it from the fork and not have it, or we can wait for 3 extra days, have it be in DevNet 2 and launch DevNet 2 at the end of next week. Again, my preference would be either of the two options that do not include a DevNet 3, because I think a DevNet 3 just adds a lot of extra delay to the fork. I'd just be curious what people's preferences are.
I mean, we're gonna have a DevNet 3. That's a certainty. There's no point in avoiding it.
I'd want this PR in whatever it is, DevNet 2, because that's the EIP change is the one that has the 48 kilobyte limit, etc. So we should probably put that in rather than have a transition on size.
So then, so my proposal, again, I don't want to be too opinionated here. My proposal would be to add 7907 in this modified form, a simplified form with the 48 kilobytes. Move it from CFI to SFI for Fusaka, and wait with DevNet 2 until at least 2 ELs or whatever threshold we think is reasonable, have it implemented, at least in the unoptimized version, sometime next week. This might mean a delay of 1, 2, 3 days for DevNet 2, and then launch it. And again, with the intention that there will not be another change of the EL side, even if we go to DevNet 3 because of PDAS, that there will basically be no further changes to the EL spec. Does this generally sound reasonable, or is there a counter proposal in terms of the way to approach this?
So I can't raise my hands in the new Zoom interface, but I think, yeah, and on top of that, sorry, I'm also watching a baby by myself, so I'm sorry for the screams in the background. But I think we should not do 7907 simply because it's just bad code chunking, and we could have code chunking in Glamsterdam and solve all the problems. Yeah, so I'd rather have an EIP for Glamsterdam that is doing code chunking. And then since there's clearly a lot of questions about the parameters and everything, and no one has really implemented it, and we want a side index and things like this, I'd rather not have it in in Fusaka 7907, and then do the thing the correct way in Glamsterdam.
Okay, then let's simplify the decision. Just 7907 in Fusaka, yes or no? Guillaume has concerns and would prefer it not to be included. Can we? Matt obviously is in favor. Do we have other voices? Do we want to include this in Fusaka, yes or no? I really would want to make the decision now, basically. It seems to me, like reading chat, that there seems to be a pretty strong majority opinion towards including it. Obviously, we do have the concerns with the testing, so I think including it does mean that we all agree that there is a reasonable chance that this might add some delays. It will already delay DevNet 2 by well, we haven't talked about DevNet 2 yet, but basically, yeah. But it sounds like we can make the decision. Any last chance? If you want to speak up against including 7907 into Fusaka, now is your chance. Otherwise, I would say. Okay, so then I would say we will move. We will include 7907 in the 48 kilobyte version in Fusaka. Then let's get back now to DevNet timing. So now we're down to 2 choices because now we can't. That simplifies it. So do we launch DevNet 2 as planned on Monday without this and agree that we will need a DevNet 3 for this? Or do we say we wait for a few days and launch DevNet 2 next week as soon as we have enough clients ready? Photos in chat prefers to launch DevNet 2 on Monday as planned and delay this until DevNet 3. Matt also was in favor of DevNet 3. Stokes is in favor of waiting with DevNet 2. Roman and Julio, when you say DevNet 2 on Monday, I assume you mean wait for this EIP until DevNet 3. Is this right? Or are you saying on Monday we see whether we have enough clients to have it be part of DevNet 2? Do it without. Okay, then it seems like other than Stokes, the majority seems to actually want to push this to DevNet 3. Okay.
Wait, Ansgar, just to clarify, I was saying that we should launch DevNet 2 as soon as possible, and if that's Monday, great. I do also think we should include 7907, but if that means...
I understand. You were the only one though. Everyone other than you said that we should not delay DevNet 2 for any cost, and we should launch DevNet 2 without
7907 is in
7907.
DevNet 2.
Yeah.
Oh, the old version.
I think we were aligned.
There's never been a DevNet 2 spec without 7907. So I was proposing that we implement 7907 as it was originally specified for DevNet 2, and then DevNet 3 we do the PR to make it 48 kilobytes. It seemed like most people would rather just do the PR with the 48 kilobyte change now in DevNet 2 because it's not that big of a change.
I see. Sorry, they're really not paying Tim enough for this job. This is complicated. Okay. Yes. So then, sorry, the distinction is actually not as I described it before. The question is, DevNet 2 will definitely have 7907. The question is it the original version or with this PR? The PR would delay DevNet 2 launch by a few days. Sounds like in chat people prefer to not delay DevNet 2. So then my understanding would be the majority decision it would be to launch 7907 with the old, sorry, to launch DevNet 2 with the old version of 7907 and then have the new version be in DevNet 3. Is this majority opinion? Does anyone want to speak up against that? I know Stokes, you would rather just wait for the PR to be merged and to be implemented by everyone or not? Yeah, Tim really is the GOAT. The PR is so fresh, it needs more time. Okay, then we just make the decision. We will launch DevNet 2 on Monday with the old version of 7907. And we'll add the updated version of 7907 for a later DevNet 3. Does this work for everyone? Is there any client that will not be ready by Monday with even the old version of 7907?
Never mind, we won't be ready with the old version on Monday.
Okay, then the idea would be to launch the DevNet without Nethermind initially and have your guys join at a later point. Okay, sounds good. So Barnabas, that would then be up to you basically once we have enough clients ready with the old version. So basically DevNet 2 specs is the old version of 7907, and we already agreed that the final version for Fusaka will be then including the PR. So that means we will need a DevNet 3 at a later point that we can discuss at a future call. Okay, that concludes this section of the call. Moving on to the next EIP, but none of the other ones are complicated, hopefully. EIP 7934, RLP execution block size limit. Again, it's CFI. Plan is to move it to SFI. Just to confirm, is there any blockers on this? I understand that there's not perfect test cases for this yet, but is there any blockers for having this in SFI and in DevNet 2? Okay, so then we will move 7934 to SFI, and it will be included in DevNet 2. And the last one, the last EIP to make an inclusion non-inclusion decision on is EIP 7939, count leading zeros opcode. Now this one is a bit out of process. This was not CFI'd in the past. This was not proposed even in the past, is my understanding, but it was included in the Berlin to op DevNet 2. So there are still now some people would actually like this to still be in Fusaka, given that it was in one of the DevNets. Do we have a champion on the call that would want to make the case for that?
Vectorize.
Oh, hi. Okay, I think just if all the client teams don't have any protests against like including it, then I'm for it because it's like stateless. You can reason about it very clearly on the worst case safety stuff.
Do you want to say why we want it in?
Okay, so let's say if we don't have it in, so okay, from like practical point of view, the compiler will probably need 1 to 2 months to adopt it. L2s will probably need like 6 months to adopt it. And by the time if everything adopts it, let's say we push to Glamsterdam, then we will realistically only see it being used like in probably 2027. And for something with such a high impact to effort, okay, you can argue that it's out of process, but yeah.
Right. Thank you. Obviously, on this EIP, the main question is just process. My understanding is it's a very self-contained EIP. Testing is already basically done for it. The problem is basically that it is only being proposed today. We kind of long closed Fusaka for newly proposed EIPs. So the question is, do we want to overrule process here to fast track it and include it and have it be part of DevNet 2? I would really only do this in this case if all the clients agreed, given that it is such an exceptional kind of process here. But if so, then of course, why not do it? Julio, you have an opinion?
No, I should have just wanted to say what you just said. But I mean, Aragon is pretty much in favor of inclusion because it's easy and small and yeah, and it's already there.
Sounds good. Just of course to repeat, one of the problems with these things is that it's, for example, it's a new opcode, so that it means it is taking up one specific opcode byte. There could be some incompatibility, say with the L2s or whatnot, given that we didn't give them any advance warning that we will now propose and then potentially immediately include it. These things are never ideal, so I think in general we should try to stick to the process in these things. But again, in this case, my understanding is that all the clients would want this. Is there any client team that has concerns or would prefer to not include this EIP into Fusaka? Okay, then yeah, I will just, in the absence of Tim, I will just make the call to overrule process here. We will add and then immediately move to SFI this EIP, and that means it will then also be part of DevNet 2, if my understanding here would be correct. Is this right? Is there any reason to not to delay that? Or basically, is everyone okay with adding it to DevNet 2? Yes, DevNet 2. Okay, then let's go ahead with it and have this EIP be part of DevNet 2. Awesome. So that's all the inclusion, non-inclusion decisions we had to make today. Sounds like we went with inclusion on all of these 4 points. That's great. Now we have 3 more EIPs that are that we have to talk about in the context of the fork. So the first one is 7975, which is the ETH70 protocol. My understanding is that Felix is on the call and could give a quick update on this.
Yes, I can give a quick update on this. So this EIP was created specifically to address the issue that beyond a certain gas limit, the receipts list of the block can increase so much that it will break the sync. And we have been discussing this EIP for a bit, and I think while it is not a change that requires a hard fork, we will still have to roll out this change kind of on the same timeline as Fusaka. Basically, it has to be in the Fusaka ready client releases in order to make sure that all clients are ready for gas limit increases after the fork, because otherwise there will be this implicit boundary in the protocol where, for example, we cannot increase the gas limit beyond 80 million because of this condition. So I am happy to answer any questions, but I want to say upfront that this EIP is still under development, and so yeah, it is not fully ready by now.
Thank you, Felix. Julio, had you end up?
Yeah, I just want to specify that this is not really like this is an EIP that doesn't need to be in an hard fork because it's a network EIP, so it's completely parallel to Fusaka from that perspective. But it is needed if we want to go above 100 million or at 100 million.
Yeah, just to clarify, so basically we already agreed in the past that ETH69 will be basically part of the Fusaka fork spec, meaning yes, it's not an actual protocol change, but it is basically something we would want to roll out in the client releases, because the Fusaka fork is the last kind of natural point this year where basically everyone will have to upgrade their clients anyway, so it would be quite desirable. So in the past we decided that we are now open to having such EIPs also in hard forks. I agree, if we can't make it into Fusaka, the nice thing is here we can always delay it. Then just if we needed to actually go across a certain gas limit threshold, we just have to manually go through the effort of making sure that all the clients have been updated. So it would still be very nice if we could indeed get it into the final releases for Fusaka. Ben, you had a comment?
I don't think it's particularly a problem if it doesn't go into Fusaka. I mean, obviously we have to do it, but because of where it will occur, which is syncing, the initial, essentially you're starting the client, you'll fail to sync. It's a good time to update. Anybody running will be fine. I don't think it's necessarily tied to the fork.
And the problem is that we need this change in the server side. So this is kind of the main issue with it. You
yeah,
will
okay.
not be able to sync unless the servers support it. So there has to be sufficient number of ETH70 servers in the network in order to be able to sync after the fork if we chose to increase the gas limit. So
okay.
yeah, I mean, I would also just, yeah.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
That's a fair point.
In general, like with the network EIPs, there's like, we always just also do the testing a bit out of band. So it's not really, I mean, we can at some point include it in DevNet, but so far there's no implementation of this EIP. So there's also no way for us to include it, for example, in the DevNet 2 or DevNet 3 or something. But we will definitely include it at some point. So, yeah.
Yeah, there is, like, if we want to just put, if we really think we should go into the Fusaka spec, then there is also another EIP that is a bit ugly, that like it's simpler to implement, which is just increasing the receipts message packets maximum size. That solves also this problem, but it's not like the best solution. But that probably is like that's already spec and that can be done probably tomorrow and by DevNet too. But I think it's gonna be fine anyway. Like I think we can just, this can be asynchronous. But yeah.
Okay, yeah, then I think indeed we can kind of, given that we have still a lot of agenda to go through, I think we kind of then all agree this is something we would want to do, or maybe potentially still investigate alternatives, and that we would basically want to, in the next few weeks, kind of like get to a decision point on whether this will be in the client releases for Fusaka or not, but that we don't have to decide this and don't have to decide this for the DevNet scopes, because this is technically not a feature EIP. Felix, does that sound right from your end?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this EIP is still under development, and we will have more input about it later. But I do think it's important to discuss it as a part of Fusaka, because we want to be ready for the gas limit increases after that fork. So we will have to treat it as part of the Fusaka scope somehow, but it's not like it doesn't have to go through the same process exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, Sounds good. So then for now, it's basically just notice to the different clients, please keep track of this as it evolves, so that once it is stable, it can be implemented as soon as possible, so that we keep the door open at least to rolling it out together with Fusaka, but we can make a call on this on a future ACDE. Awesome. Thank you, Felix. So that was that. Then we have EIP 7918. That is Anders' EIP for the Blob fee market. There's one last parameter we need to finalize there. Anders, are you on the call? Can you briefly give a summary of this? And if so, could we try to time box this a little bit, just because we don't have that much time left?
All right. Hi. Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So we had a preliminary setting in DevNet 1. It was 2 to the power of 14. That is 16,000. And we were also meaning to get back to what exactly we should set it to. So I made a post. I can link it in the chat where I go through the various considerations that we can have. So if we strictly want to ensure a functioning fee market, then 2 to the power of 12, that is around 4,000 gas, would be perfectly sufficient. But if we fully wish to charge L2s for the compute costs that blobs impose, then we would rather wish to go probably above 2 to the power of 14. So that's sort of the context in which we should make a decision on what exactly we set this constant to. If I reflect on what people have said, when we're discussing with people, I would say that some people are in favor of raising and some lowering, and I would say the average sentiment has been around 2 to the power of 13, perhaps, or something like that. 8,000.
Sounds good. And just to give a little bit of context here for people listening, basically the idea is just that we want to make sure in the future that basically the minimum blob base fee is always set so that basically one blob of a blob transaction would cost at least the equivalent amount of normal gas of that value. So currently it's set to 16,000, so meaning that any one blob would cost at least the same amount as 16,000 normal gas. So that would, for example, mean that a 6 blob transaction would now roughly consume, at the minimum, of course, roughly consume 120,000 gas, which is, of course, a meaningful raise over the normal flow of 21,000, but it's also not in the millions. Is that the correct understanding?
Yeah.
Okay. So then the
yeah,
question is
posted a table here. You can check out the table in the chat, which can be helpful in understanding, how we affect, the real price of for consumers.
I think for now we can't go too deep into this. I think as you said already, basically some people would want it higher, some people would want it lower. To me, it seems. I mean, I personally would want it lower, but it also seems kind of at a reasonable level right now. I think you said maybe the average between the different opinions could be 1 power of 2 lower, so basically 8,000 instead of 16,000. I think I heard you say.
Essentially,
right.
Having talked with around 6 people, and if we go by that, we would end up at 2 to the power of 13. But I mean, for me, 2 to the power of 12, 2 to the power of 13, 2 to the power of 14 would be acceptable. And I would say that for me, I don't know, 2 to the power of 13 maybe is something. If people feel that this is okay, if there's some people that feel strongly about lowering it below and some higher, so maybe they should opine about it.
Yeah, Ben, I think you were on the side of wanting it higher.
Yeah, I mean, I think the current price is underpriced in terms of work done. But that's fine. But so I think we should stick with the current value rather than decreasing it further.
Okay.
Especially since a lot of our recent motivations is trying to get things priced correctly, rather than let's massively underprice everything.
Right. So I just wanted to point out one maybe nuanced point here is that while it basically the EIP does give some sort of equivalent amount of gas, it doesn't actually count against the normal gas limit. So unfortunately, it does not in any way help limit the total compute load of a block. You can still have a block that uses all of the normal gas for normal compute and then the additional kind of blob gas for KCG compute. So I think in this sense, it is not basically a higher value here does not help limit compute load or help with scaling or anything like that. Yeah, I personally feel slightly uncomfortable at the current level because it kind of does basically raise the minimum amount that a blob transaction, a full 6 blob transaction can cost by a factor of 5 or 6, which is a bit much to me for the original purpose of just trying to make the fee market more responsive, but also I don't want to drag this out too much. So Ben, if you said you prefer to stay at this value, I don't know. Do we have anyone else on the call with an opinion on this?
Casper dropped 2 to the power of 12 in the chat, and Stokes dropped 2 to the power of 11 as preferences.
I see.
I mean,
well then,
it's an extremely low value anyway.
Yeah, it's very low.
At the current one.
So
it's
then, Ben,
below.
given that all the other opinions would be below the current EIP value, would you be fine with going down one order of magnitude? Oh, sorry, 1 power of 2, and basically go with 2 to the 13 instead of what is currently in the EIP, 2 to the 14 as a compromise value? I mean, I understand that's not fully principled, but just to basically make a pragmatic decision here and lock this in for Fusaka.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, then I think again in the spirit of just having this locked into Fusaka, because we've been discussing this for quite a while and we can always revisit this in Glamsterdam, then I would say we just finalize at 2 to the 13 and move and basically just have this value be basically the final one for Fusaka. Is that okay with everyone? Okay.
Yeah, as mentioned for me, yeah, it's I think that yeah, I'm fine with either of these options.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Then if you could change it to 2 to the 13 in the EIP, then I think we can move forward with that. And again, sorry, I'm not super familiar with this process. Does this then mean that we will target this new value of 2 to the 13 for DevNet 2? Or does that make sense? That's how I would do it at least. So yeah, then if no one protests, then we should have DevNet 2 already use this updated value of 2 to the 13. Okay, perfect. So then the last EIP to talk about here for Fusaka is EIP 7892. That is the BPO forks, and there specifically the question is about the per transaction blob limit, which is currently set to 6, I think is my understanding. I think, Alex, you wanted to talk about this.
Yeah, there was just a question that came up. So I believe, I forget where the PR is on this, but essentially there was an introduction of this max blobs per transaction constant, and it was to the BPO EIP so that we could presumably change this per BPO. We should just agree on how we want to do this. Well, okay, there's a few things here. One is just what this number should be. I think we discussed some last week, and I think the most common preference I heard was just 6 per transaction. There's then a question if we want to have this be part of the BPO schedule, as in configurable within like a named hard fork. My take is that it should not be. I think we might want to change from, let's call it a named fork. So from like, say, Fusaka to Glamsterdam, but I don't really see the need to have this like fine-grained control within each BPO to change this number.
Lucas?
2 things why it's generally good to limit it in the first place. So gossiping 72 blob transactions in the current mempool will be really hard. And that's one thing. And block building with such a big blobs is also hard to do it optimally, and it's easier to do it with a smaller number. I think 6 was chosen as a kind of extreme of a current state. 12 is also completely fine, for example, or even 18.
Shaba?
Yeah. So my point is, it's again boils down to these two things: wet value and how you want to set it. And I think I don't see any reason to go beyond what we have now. There are drawbacks of having this larger than 6. So one thing is, I think we don't need more than 6, and the other one is, if we don't need really to change this, then I will not make it part of the fast track changing mechanism, which we call BPO. So yeah, why we don't need more than 6? I think it introduces a bunch of issues. So then we have a larger span from 1 to 12, say. Then you have to add more size-based logic to handling this. We have pricing issues, whatever comes in. If we are increasing it, then we have more problems on the transmission of these. We will start to fragment it, but that kind of doesn't make sense because we can already fragment it by not sending these big ones, and it just doesn't have a use to make it large. We already amortizing the cost by 6. We wouldn't change that too much, and I don't think the R2s need, or other users or whoever they would need larger ones. So yeah, just simply let's just keep it as is, and I don't think we need a fast way of changing this because we won't.
Ben?
Yeah, I don't think we need to change it to a higher level. One of the issues is, again, it will create a non-functioning fee market because essentially you have Tetris blob packing. So you might have over demand in terms of the number of blobs available, but say you had 9 slots and you have 2 7 blob transactions, then you can only fit one of them. So, it's gonna, or 2 6 blob transactions, you can only fit one of them in a 9 thing. So you're gonna get underfilled. So putting a lower limit on the max size of blobs means you can include more blobs, paradoxically.
Makes sense. Alex, do you maybe want to synthesize what that means decision-wise?
Yeah, well, yeah, so I mean, it sounds like everyone's comfortable with 6 as like a flat limit. So I would even suggest taking it out of the BPO config and just having this be a parameter that we just have for all time. And obviously we could raise it in the future if we need to. So that might look like putting a PR to the peer.CIP. I mean, I'm flexible on where exactly it should live, but it sounds like we're fine with 6 and not changing, right?
I feel like the peer.EIP is the right place to put this parameter.
Well, this was adjusted to the blob schedule EIP because the values are actually only represented in the blob schedule. So we're gonna need to make a PR to remove it from the blob schedule, and then make a PR to hardcode it in the peer.CIP, I think. And then we should aim to do these changes for DevNet 3. Or DevNet 2, I really don't care. Because the values will not change. So we could actually just target DevNet 2 for this.
This is actually a question, should it be 2 or 3? Is this going to be a lift for people to implement time for DevNet 2?
It's a constant.
Yeah, but they need to take it out of the config, and then there's like BPO logic they might want to change. Like, it's more a question of like, if we want to launch Monday with DevNet 2, like, can we just make this change in time? It shouldn't make any difference to do in DevNet 3.
And my understanding is that this is actually a CL side question, right?
No.
Because this is a CL. Oh, sorry. Never mind.
Just the, I can make a change on our testing stack.
Yeah, how do we make that decision? Do we have EL devs with an opinion on DevNet 2 versus DevNet 3?
I personally feel like it should go in DevNet 3. Like, the more things, small little things we add to DevNet 2, the like more likely it is DevNet 2 is going to take longer. DevNet, we're talking about like 2 working days, and we've already discussed a few things that we need to sort out for DevNet 2. it, like, to me, just makes, like, we're gonna have DevNet 3, let's just say we'll do this change in DevNet 3. I don't really see an issue with that.
Sounds good. And just to repeat, this change that we're talking about is only moving it out of the BPO parameter space into just like something that's fixed per hard fork, right?
And then moving it into the pure EIP and making it a constant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So then I would say we do it for DevNet 3, given that there seems to be limited opinions and the opinions seem to point toward DevNet 3. Okay, perfect. Then
And we should also probably discuss who is gonna make the PRs for this.
Yes, any volunteers?
I said I can do it.
Sounds good. Then let me briefly recap and then hand it off to Barnabas to confirm. Let me post this to chat, paste this to chat. This would be these would be the diffs for DevNet 2 and DevNet 3. So basically for DevNet 2, that we want to launch on Monday, we would have we would include 7951 with the R1 curve with the old pricing. We will have 7907, the old version included. 7934 and 7939, those were uncontroversial, just included, and the 7918 parameter changed to the 13. Those would be the only changes. Well, the only. Basically, this would be for DevNet 2, and then we would wait for DevNet 3 with the potential pricing changes for the R1 curve with the new version for 7907 and the per transaction blob max move into the PLS EIP out of the BPO. Does this sound right? And then if so, Barnabas, can you confirm what that means for DevNet 2 timing and everything?
I think 7918 parameter change to the power of 13 should go to DevNet 3 because it's one of these repricing style EIPs, and I haven't even seen the PR for this, so I would just shift it to DevNet 3.
Okay, that sounds good. Then we make that change. It's going to be out of DevNet 2 into DevNet 3. Other than that, does that sound good? And then can you confirm the timings for DevNet 2?
Yeah, other than that, sounds good. And then if we have at least 3 ELs and 3 CLs to launch on Monday, then we're going to do that. Otherwise, we're going to shift it by 1 day and we're going to reevaluate.
Awesome. I will also post all of these changes that I just listed out, including moving this as Barnabas recommended into the Discord channel after the call. Perfect. Then that seems like that would conclude the section on Fusaka, and we can move to Glamsterdam. Is there anything last on Fusaka that anyone wants to briefly talk about? Okay, then let's move to Glamsterdam. We have 2 things to discuss. One standalone EIP proposed and one headliner proposal. For the standalone EIP 7745, Zolt wanted to give a quick overview if you're on the call.
Yes. Hi, hello everyone. So, yeah, I will just do a quick introduction of this PR, not wanting to go into too many technical details. So I will try to share my screen. Yeah, let's just share this.
I can see your screen.
You don't?
I can. Sorry,
You
I can see
see
your screen. Yes,
awesome.
You can continue.
Then present slideshow. All right, it's just so that I remember my talking points. So what I want to present is this EIP I've been working on since like I don't know, last year September. So but actually this is a problem I wanted to solve since a very long time. It's about trustlessly proving log queries, and why I'm so interested in this and why I think we should pay attention to this. Obviously logs are important part of this whole ecosystem, and this is just practically an unsolved problem to to really prove existence of logs. I mean the completeness of a response, and even even a full node needs to like maintain external like additional indexes to do like an efficient search, because if we just want to scan all this like 500 gigabytes of receipts, then it takes like, I don't know, 20 minutes depending on the system to search in the entire 10-year log history. And yeah, there's also like other stuff on similar unsolved problem, this transaction lookup by hash. Also, we cannot really prove that a certain transaction is not canonical because there's just no index of them in the consensus. And yeah, in general, I'm really interested in making basically everything trustlessly provable, because let's just say now endgame is like a popular term, and if we really want to make Ethereum as we wanted, then I think, okay, for a while we can live with this suboptimal solutions, but in the end, I think everything should be trustlessly provable, and 7745 does helps with that. It's something that obviously it's a little bit more complex than the per block Bloom filters, but it can replace the per block Bloom filters, which are totally useless now, and it allows actually really efficient lookup. And yeah, so let me just quickly and high level how I wanted to achieve this, and what are like the issues. So like currently what we have is a linear index, which is obviously really cheap to append, very expensive to look up. Also like history expiry is easy to do, but yeah, it's like absolutely too slow and too expensive to do. And also like another approach is like putting all these lookup events in a big Merkle tree, just like the state, which will pretty much cost the same as the state. And logs were I really like logs, by the way, so I think it's a really good idea that to have this thing that contracts cannot access directly, but they are like significantly cheaper to add than state entries. And yeah, so we also, for like the lookup data structure, I wanted to just find something kind of in the middle. So what I came up with is basically it's not a Bloom filter anymore. It's still a probabilistic search structure. You can imagine it as a series of sparse two-dimensional bitmaps, which are then rehashed also into fixed size lookup trees, and this whole thing is tree hashing kind of a smart way, so that I mean, updating this structure is cheap, because the latest map that's being filled with this probabilistic lookup entries is kind of small. So for maintaining the consensus so minimal data structure needed for consensus generation is something like 20 something megabytes. It's like very conveniently fits into memory also, like so it's obviously fits memory, that's also cheap to add and everything. And but still these maps, because they have these trees, because they have fixed size, they can organize in a way that look up for a single event for longer stretch of blocks is efficient, both the database access wise, and also Merkle proof wise. So yeah, this is basically a general purpose hash lookup table, but it also gives an exact position of where this event happens. So it's also suitable for pattern matching with log address and topic, but it's also suitable for looking up transactions and everything. It can also give like exclusion proof if the event is not present. And yeah, another important thing is that unlike the per block Bloom filters, this design puts a fixed number of events in each of these maps, and therefore the density of the maps is constant. The false positive rates are consistent, and also they depend kind of on the type of search pattern, but they don't depend on like the guess limit. So like it's it works well with L1 scaling. And yeah, also there was, I mean, there's one key problem that the Bloom filters didn't solve, and also I found it like a major issue that these lookup keys had a very, very uneven distribution. So there are keys that happen like once in the lifetime of the chain, and there are certain keys that make up like more than 10% of a certain block, like certain ESC20 token contracts, and yeah, like wrapped ether, very popular and stuff like that. So yeah, obviously I also wanted to come up with something that will fit the scaling endgame. And yeah, here this is something that probably should be like examined, so like discussed further or researched further. But I believe it's most of the work that has to be done is hashing. So yeah, I mean we just have to. Currently, I'm working with SHA-2, but yeah, any other hash function will work. And just yeah, I want to quickly like wrap this whole thing. So the point is that for a like 10-year history lookup, typically depending on the complexity of the search, it requires like 1 to 5 megabytes of data, which is significantly better than 500 gigabytes. And even if we want to at one point zk proof like individual lookups, it was obviously still easier to work with lots less data. If zk can make the individual proofs even cheaper, then because like adding the new logs is a lot cheaper at the block generator bottlenecks than adding state entries, then it might be even viable option to just use logs and prove all logs. Yeah, it's not want to go into this too much. And this is my last slide. Yeah, so thing is that this thing already exists. I mean, in Go Ethereum currently, the data structure exists. It's not in consensus. It doesn't calculate root hashes and doesn't generate remote trustless proofs yet, but it does work when serving ETH logs. And yeah, I already have some numbers. This code is really not optimized yet. The database access patterns could be like way better. So currently, for like an entire 10-year history lookup, it's somewhere between a few hundred milliseconds and like 5 seconds. Maybe if the disk is slow, that it can be more. But also, I think this could be optimized to like typically below 1 second lookup for. So it's and also with the remote proofs. So I already know the amount of data that needs to be accessed and proven. So also for a trustless proof for a light wallet, this would be something like 5-10 megabytes of data, absolute worst case for like 10 years of history. But for like a last year lookup of a single wallet, it will be typically more like a few hundred kilobytes. And yeah, so the you can already look at like some parts of this implemented in Go Ethereum master branch /filter maps package. Also, we just set up a proof of concept single node DevNet with Ethan and Nimbus guys. And also I have a proof of concept prover and verifier for remote query proofs. This is still like work in progress. And yeah, this whole thing.
Yeah, maybe in the interest of time, just jumping in because we only have 5 minutes left, and Ethan also wanted to give a presentation. If you could try to wrap up.
Yeah, this is I practically did. So yeah, right now I'm just so my current focus is just containing the complexity and making it something that will be easy to implement. And yeah, I think this is pretty much it. I just wanted to like introduce this EIP, and yeah,
Perfect.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Actually, I think it makes a lot of sense. Do we have comments on this EIP already, Lukasz?
So one comment from me is that it looked. I take a look this week, and it looked extremely complex for me. To be honest, I didn't understand it correctly, even though I tried. And I know. So yeah, my like main potential reason is complexity. And okay, you have here to improve specs to reduce complexity. Maybe that will help. And the second one is that it will compete with all the other things. So I'm not sure if we can prioritize it from Glamsterdam, but that's a different problem.
Yeah,
Yeah,
complexity is definitely main challenge, but the consensus generation code is currently under 1,000 lines. The EIP is obviously not an easy read, but I'm working on that. So yeah, this is currently at this stage, and yeah, it should be made more approachable, obviously.
Sounds good. And just to clarify, I think my understanding is that this is not a proposal for a headliner for Glamsterdam, so more a general EIP that then can be slotted in either Glamsterdam or a future fork if we have agreement that we want to do this and if there's room. So this is not a headliner proposal specifically. We only have 3 minutes left of official time. I'm sure we could run 2-3 minutes over, but Ethan, I'm not sure if you would still want to briefly talk about your headline proposal now, or if you then want to maybe push this to next ACDE. Up to you.
No, I can try, but I need to be able to share my screen as well.
Yes, short,
So,
if you could end your
Short,
screen
can you
sharing.
end your screen share and then I can do mine. So my proposal is about 7919, the pure read. Let me see. macOS is keeping me. I have to rejoin the call. Let me quickly do it.
If you have a link to share in the Zoom chat, I'm sure someone else could also share screen.
Okay, I'm back, and now this works.
We can see your screen.
You can see my screen now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So it goes into the same direction that we essentially want to solve this problem that wallets have, that today it's very difficult to use an RPC in a trust minimized way. That's a security problem because the RPC can lie to you by accident because they got hacked or due to misconfiguration, software bugs. Today there is this ETH_get_proof EIP that solves it, like for the balances, and you can also run your own EVM against it. But there are some things that just don't work. For example, ETH transfers, they are not part of the logs. You actually have to do a trace call on every single transaction and subscribe to an external indexing service if you are in exchange. Otherwise, there is no way how you can find out that a user deposited to you. That's affecting smart contract wallets. Similar problem for beacon withdrawals. You don't really know in what block you got a withdrawal, so you cannot really verify that easily. And the priority fees. Then the other problem is the completeness for the ETH_get logs. Like you can prove that a log happened, but you don't know if the server provided everything to you. And sometimes there are these bugs where logs are missing. Here on Alchemy is one of the biggest providers. It took over a day, and during that time, the wallets just could not access any logs. And you also cannot just fall back to an alternative RPC because then you have to trust that RPC, right? Then another complaint that I get from wallets a lot is that the receipts are extremely inefficient to prove, like there is no from address, there is no contract address, no authority. There is like this RPC field of the log index within the block for which you essentially have to download all the receipts. There is the gas used. Like on chain, we have cumulative gas used, but if you want actual gas used, you need to download the prior receipt as well. And we also have this logs bloom field. And if you want to verify the logs bloom, you have to download all the logs as well. So it's kind of pointless to have it there because of this linear hash that we use for the receipts. For transactions, it's similar that we have like 3 different hashes here and then a 4th one in the CL based on the serialization. And the actually important hash, the transaction hash, is not actually on chain, like the one that users use on RPCs all the time. We don't commit to it because it lacks this MPT prefix. And also the verifiers have to keep updating their code because of all these transaction types that have a lot of legacy stuff. Like we added these access lists, and the only reason why we have them is for users to unstock their funds on a contract that did not respond well for gas repricing. So they need a way to lower the gas cost so they can still get their funds out. And we also have these fields that are added in the middle. So the verifiers have to keep getting updated for every new transaction type. And yeah, Purity tries to solve these concerns. The minimal scope is like Scholz log index. That one gives us completeness proofs. It gives us the ability to efficiently search proofs within like one request. Then we also need to log all the internal ETH transfers. That's like extra information that we extract from the EVM, but we don't have to change how the EVM works or how it prices things. And then, like essentially, when we hash transactions try root and receipts try root, we use SSC. And when we process an execution payload or build one, then we use SSC encoding. That's not that big of a deal because nothing of the rest has to change. Like the Geth can still use its same transaction object internally. It has RLP encoding, it has JSON encoding. We just add a third one, SSC encoding, and when we interact over the engine, we use that. And SSC gives us also benefits when, for example, we want block level access lists because we can just summarize it to the hash tree root. So we can drop the pre-finalized access lists that are already executed. And likewise for ePBS and Fossil, they move stuff around on the CL side. So adding the stability there for SSC also makes sense. And yeah, like for the three core pillars of Ethereum, UX, L1 scaling, L2 scaling, we improved the security. That means that now we can ask any RPC, not just trusted ones. That also means we can use anonymous access over like decentralized networks such as Tor. Otherwise, it's like accessing a website without HTTPS over Tor where the exit node can scan you. And then we also get rid of those external indexers that are needed to track ETH transfers. Those are quite expensive, so getting rid of them reduces cost for projects. This new log index from Scholz, it scales to arbitrary gas limit, including gigagas. It will not become inefficient like the current logs bloom. We get better RPC latency that reduces cost further. It means that UX is much faster, especially in a scaling world. Also, like this receipts networking change would be trivial with SSC because you can prove inclusion more easily. And for the L2s, essentially many of them are forks of L1 code, so they benefit by inheriting the changes. And it also means that when an L2 event has to be proven on L1, that it needs lower gas cost because you don't have to send the full receipt anymore, which can actually exceed the call data size. That was something that Proto from Optimism back then was also asking for. Yeah, like this is the proposal, like the purist to focus really on UX so that it makes sense to use Ethereum in a trust minimized way. It's not a either or, it goes really well with the other headliners that have already been proposed. Yeah, that's my presentation.
Perfect. Given that we're already above 5 minutes, we probably don't have much time for discussion. If there's like one question or something, we could briefly take it. Otherwise, of course, the idea is anyway that these headliners will be discussed at a later date. Okay, well then, thank you, Ethan. And in general, thank you everyone for this call. Quite happy we have all the decisions now for DevNet 2 and more or less for DevNet 3. Thank you all, and can't wait for Tim to take back over. Awesome. Bye, everyone.
You did a great job, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you.